if I can welcome you after a fabulous lunch. I was going to start off, just before I introduce the band, I'm just going to start off with a little bit of exercise. So, excuse me, I just want, because I want to introduce three types of organisation. And I think the first type of organisation everybody's fairly familiar with, and I'm going to ask you in a minute, but that's your bureaucracy. And then I think some people have heard of a meritocracy, whereby it's all about the ideas and the creativity. And then there's things which I'm going to talk about in a minute called an adhocracy. An adhocracy from the Latin, as you all know. We've got some medics in the room, haven't we? I'm sure you've learned all your Latin. Adhocracy from the ad hoc, meaning of purpose, and organisations that actually do just what they believe. So basically, if you've heard of a bureaucracy, just stand up. If you've heard of a bureaucracy, it's all part of the exercise, excuse me. Just put your hand up. Right. Okay. Right. If you've heard of bureaucracy, just stand up. If you haven't heard of bureaucracy, just stay where you are or put your hand up. If you think you work for a bureaucracy, you may sit down. If you think you work for a bureaucracy. Okay, so there's a few here who've sat down, so they think they work for a bureaucracy. If you think you work for a meritocracy, where actually those people who've got the best ideas and are energetic, and you think you work for somebody or an organisation which is meritocratic, then sit down. Oh, meritocratic. So everything's on merit. Oh yeah, no. It's on merit. You've got to stand up. And then adhocracy is organisations that are of purpose. So I have a belief, and I work for an organisation that has a belief. And are you still standing because you work for one of those? No? Oh, what do you work for? You work for yourself, yeah. So you're probably working for adhocracy. You've got the freedom, you're doing what you believe.
Just say, yeah.
Yeah?
Whatever I believe.
Where we believe. Please, sit down. Now, of course, if you work for a bureaucracy, it's all about the title, it's all about the position. And so, if I now introduce the band, so if I was in a bureaucracy, I'd introduce myself as John Turk. I'm the director of Centra, because that tells you all where I sit in that particular hierarchy between God and who was ever at the other end. Of course, I'm one down. We're not all in direct communication, but thankfully some of us are. If I was in a meritocracy, and I was very impressed this morning, I was going down through all the speakers, and meritocracy, it's all about the ideas, and so this morning was very much about the CBEs and the OBEs. Is anybody here, before I go any further, anybody got a CBE or an OBE? But a meritocracy might sort of say, you know, I've achieved, I've put my little label on about where I've got to, I've got my CBE. Well, if I introduce myself, I'm John Turk, no BE. So I haven't reached those D heights, but maybe a few of these presentations, and you never know. And then the last type of organisation is those that are of purpose, so where we actually have a belief. And I suppose, hands up if you're in the NHS. You know, because I feel that the NHS started off as an adhocracy. And you're still there because we have a belief. We have a belief. We all love the NHS because we have a belief. It's just those bloody bureaucrats. They get off our back. But so if I was introducing myself as John Turk of Adhocracy, then I'd say my purpose as a director from the bureaucracy is to help my people thrive. That's all, that's the only purpose I have, because if I can help my people thrive, then they'll make the organisation thrive, and then if the organisation thrives, then everybody who's being looked after or cared for by the organisation will thrive. So, actually there's a few people here from Centra. I think a few of them sat down before we got to the Adhocracy, but we'll have words later. Because you can't always be an Adhocracy. But then actually I've also got Claudia Martinez here, so I'm going to ask you to stand up.
Oh my goodness. No.
Is from our research and innovation team, but she's just a creative person who makes stuff happen. That's her purpose in life. Hey! No, and then I'm just going to introduce Eddie Jacob, who's been standing in the corner. And we were discussing, because he's from Innovation Art.
Yeah, arts.
Arts.
Yes.
Ah, say that one more time.
Innovation arts.
Innovation Arts. And if we were just discussing what kind of organisation he is from, because if it was a bureaucracy, he'd be like the chief scribbling officer, or actually, or somebody came in and said, "Are you the cartoon man?" But and then if we were describing you, you would just say, "You're a creative who tells stories through pictures." And we've asked Eddie here because we're just going to capture the session in visual, so you can all take a photograph of it and take it away. But anyway, this is the band, and we're going to talk about being human in a digital world, and part of that is, and in terms of some of the things that we've done this morning, or in the earlier sessions, everybody's talked about everything, but nobody's talked about technology. And so we're just saying, well, actually, how can technology help to keep people being human? Because ultimately, we're not here to serve the technology is here to serve us, and we're going to explore a few of the ways that might happen. I was very fortunate a couple of weeks ago to go to another conference called the Change Board, and they were talking about future talent. And again, the last chap from the army, it started off in the army, was just saying, in fact, I can't remember what he was saying.
About the army.
About the army.
And about
Transitioning.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. It was a three-way effort. It is a workshop. It is a workshop, and it's going to be very participative. Oh yeah, but it was talking about transitioning through life, and one of the things that they talked about in the future talent, the impact of technology, and the fact that people are very scared of technology, because there's this whole thing about, oh, technology is going to take my job away. You know, we're going to have driverless cars, we're going to have this, that, and the other. And one of the things that I took away from this Future Talent Conference is that if you are in care, you're giving care, or fortunately for me, in my hierarchical thing, in management, things that need to interact very much on a personal level with people, then those things, it's very difficult to replace some of those things through technology. So all of us who have some relation directly with care, actually there is nothing to fear in terms of the future. Actually, it's more and more about how technology can help us do our job better. One of the other things, and talking about transitioning, and thank you for the collaborative effort there, is one of the other things, they had somebody talking, one of the researchers from London Business School, about the 100-year life. And that, I brought a book along here. I'm not selling books, but it always comes in handy. Jolly good read. And they just talked about the fact that the whole concept of the three-stage life is over. And the three-stage life is, I go to school, I get taught something, I go into the workplace till the age 65, or actually it's going up and up and up, and then I retire. And actually that no longer holds true, because for the millennials, people say, for example, somebody born in 2007, 50% of the people born in 2007 will live to 103. So 50% of those will live beyond 103. Obviously, the other 50% might not get to 103. But what are you going to do from 65 to 103? So, and actually, this transition's already started. I mean, I've spoken to a few people, but probably like me, you started in employment, but then you go off and you go and do your own thing. You go and re-educate yourself, and then you may go back into the workplace. And the reason that whole three-stage life started was because when we took people out of the fields or in their old cottage industry, sort of doing their own knitting and doing the wool mills, we then put them into factories. And then they took the children with them, and then they actually had to find something else for the children to do, because they couldn't, in the end, take them all into the factories. So they started education, and we are still operating very much in that world. But anyway, the bottom line is that we're going to use technology. And I got you all a minute ago to use the old-fashioned method of standing up to answer questions. But actually, what I'd quite like you to do is, actually, if you've got one of these, not necessarily an apple, but anything, just hold it up for a minute. If you've got one of these, and then everybody look round the room. Everybody look round the room, right? There's about 3 embarrassed people. But if you've got one of these, and of course we all have, and then if you go in and open any browser, so if you go into your browser and then you have to put into your browser www.slido.com. And I'm just sort of looking for faces and people saying, yeah, no, I've got that far.
A few people are switching phones on at the minute.
Oh, right, okay.
Like waiting for them to...
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Because I should have said, actually, if you hold this up, you know, what was the next thing you thought I was going to say? Because most times you go in and somebody says, can you please make sure these are switched off? Yeah. But actually, I'm going to say, can you please make sure these are switched on? Because we're in a technology thing, and this technology, as I say, is here to help us. Well, honestly, it. So you're in the west side of Ireland now. I don't know. Is people be able to put in Slido? Yeah, and that's come up. And then if you enter the code, which is hashtag, the hashtag is already there, and then put in Centra, and then I think we're saying that actually nothing's going to happen then.
Yes. There are no active polls, but there will be one.
Don't worry, there will be one. So this is just a test question, okay? And you can join in if you want. So the question is, what's this music and who's it by? You can join in if you want. And everybody is looking in absolute amazement. Come on, join in. Right. So, if you think you know who that is, what the music is, and who's it by, then this is a test question. So if you put in your answer, so far we've got 24 people. 24 people have answered. We look like we've got a few more. You got no signal? Well, the thing is, 39. 39. We've got 39 people, and I think there's a general theme? All right, and I'm just looking for when it slows down.
It's around 45 now.
Do you know, in terms of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and I know there's a play come out about it, isn't there? The most reliable way to get the answer is actually to ask the audience. Statistically, that is the most reliable way. So forget the old phone a friend malarkey, or anybody else you're in communication with. It's ask the audience. So, in terms of asking this audience, 47 people, 87% says that it was Freedom, George Michael, and I'm sure that is the right answer. Fantastic. But basically, in terms of Centra as an adhocracy and what do we believe in Centra, that, and we've heard this morning, fundamentally life is for living. And I think you've heard this morning, if you get an early diagnosis of dementia, it does not mean that your life is over. In fact, what you want to be doing is to encourage everybody to continue to interact with their friends, carry on doing what they do, carry on doing what they enjoy. Because most of what does happen is that people feel they get involved in the health and safety industry. And I don't know how long the health and safety industry has been around, but we have spent billions on health and safety, and it's all gone on the safety bit. I know we're spending some on health through the NHS, but in terms of the health and safety, all the stuff we do is all about what you can't do. You can't play conkers, you can't do this, you can't do that. And there's so much of what we do is about stopping people doing what they want to do themselves, or family and friends, or various other people saying, actually, no, you can't do that, that's not safe, don't do that. Whereas actually, we need to be enabling people to do and carry on all the stuff that they really enjoy. So, again, another quiz. How many people do you think go missing in London every year? You got the 5,500, 12,000, 44,000 or 104,000 people every year in London wander off and go missing. Got 10 people. Oh, it's a close horse race. Oh, it's neck and neck. Oh, 5.5's coming up from somewhere. We've got 17 people, 19 people. I think, what did we get to? How many people did we have last time? 47. So I'm waiting.
It hasn't come up on mine. You might have to refresh your browser.
Now, the thing, there's an important lesson here, that technology enables us to do stuff, but it doesn't always work. But that shouldn't stop us trying. Yeah, so 90, oh, right, no, we're back on. People have found their browser. Up to 21 people. Keep going, keep pressing. Oh, it's neck and neck. Oh no, 44's taken over. Any more? Not got it. Browsers.
Yeah.
44. Right. Okay. Well, we've got 12,000's taken over. Right. Okay. Right. There were 47 people. There's now 26. I'm losing people along the way, but anyway. So, and the actual answer is 44,000 people just in London go wandering off and go missing. That's every single year. And that's partly from the Metropolitan Police, but also it must be true because it's written in the Daily Mail. I heard a slight laughter over here. But no, but basically for the Met, one of the most significant issues they have is people wander off. A very high proportion of those with dementia. But actually, in one sense, that's great, because they're getting out there and they're doing what they want to do. Do we have anybody here from Dementia UK in the audience? And the question is, how can these 44,000 people, basically with dementia, you can still make choices, want to go off and do stuff. How can we enable them to do stuff versus the debate about, it's not safe. It's not safe for you to go out. And one of those ways is actually just by tracking. And this is a lady. This is a real case from last month, from March. This is all in the public domain. Her name, I love her name, Elaine Playforth. Right? She knows where she's going. And, but she's 95. As I say, she's not a customer of Centra, but her family had invested in some GPS technology. And she's slightly deaf, partially sighted. And she set off at 10:30 in the morning last month on a Friday in March. And she lives in Harrow, and she made her way into central London. And at 5 o'clock, she experienced the same problem we've just been having. The technology gave up. Her battery ran out. And she disappeared for 24 hours. The thing is that the technology did actually help, because up until that point, the family did have a track of where she was headed. And then the other thing is, we are already, all of us, being tracked. We just don't realise it are. So they could look at where her Oyster card had last been used, and her Oyster card was used on a bus going in a particular direction, and they were able to go and narrow down the area where she'd been. So although the technology didn't quite work, actually it did help in terms of the old Hansel and Gretel leaving a bit of a breadcrumb. Another case, and I'm pleased to say, I'm not going to use his real name, but this is a real picture, again, it might terribly be from the Daily Mail, I don't know, but I'm going to call him George. Going to call him George. A man, he lived in Faversham, and he was a customer of ours, and he wandered off, and in Faversham there's a little tributary which goes into the channel up by the Isle of Sheppey. And he got stuck in the mud up to his thighs. And actually he was able to call for help and actually have a conversation with our monitoring team, who were able to call the Fire and Rescue Brigade, who again we can see from the photograph, and this is a real photograph, observing all their health and safety, right? He's got his wellies on, he's got his lunch in his backpack there, in case it goes on all afternoon, I don't know. But anyway, was able to go down and find George, because again, the team, the monitoring centre, were able to talk the crew to actually where he physically was. I don't know what the chap on the top there is saying. Well, you got yourself in a bit of mud there, mate. Anyway, so the technology does work, and good old George, he used to go off all sorts of places, and once we tracked him going the wrong way up the M20 at about 5 miles an hour. But you can actually track where he's going. If he's going to get into any difficulty, we can actually go and direct people. But it's enabling him to live an active life. He's an active chap. So we actually monitor about 200,000 people. A lot of that is actually in people's own home. So just making sure they're safe around the home. But also, and the whole point of what I'm trying to say, is there is now mobile technology. And actually, George had on an Everon Vega. Or you could have, there's a thing called a pebble, which if you want to attach to a piece of clothing, I was going to have one here, but you can attach, or if you're slightly sporty, you can use a safe motion. And as somebody ruined it for me, so it sounds like some kind of bowel movement.
Yeah, when I've thought about that,
But it's ruined it. But or I don't know. I mean, I've been wearing one, and so I've actually got a Navigal S1 on. And actually, I don't know. Before I highlighted to people, I've got that on. Whether actually anybody even noticed. I thought, John, you've got a bit of a chunky watch on there. But they're actually, you can get them now, and they're actually very discreet, and nobody knows that you're actually wearing anything. If you want to, I'm not going to demo any of these, but if you want to find out or even look at how it tracks and what you can see on the screen, you can go and visit. In fact, I'm going to embarrass the team now because I'm going to ask them to stand up again. So, yes. So if you want to ask any of the team anything about actually how these work, thank you very much. But you can actually set geo zones. So actually, if I want to say, well, actually, my mum, she loves going walking a couple of miles down to the shops, then actually I could set a little 2 mile zone radius. And actually, if she passes out of there, actually it'll send an alert. And then actually one of the team can actually, over the device, actually speak to her and just find out what's going on, if she's fine. Or you can actually track how fast somebody's going. So if somebody suddenly starts going very, very fast in a particularly straight line, you can work out they've probably got themselves on a train and they may not know exactly where they're going, but at least you can pick them up from crew. But basically, one of the biggest concerns, I think everybody, or I'm telling you what concern you have, but one of the concerns people have is around data. And, actually, are we tracking people and therefore we know we've got too much data on them? I don't know if all of you know. I mean, I must have got this device in 2015, in January, because I think I've now got like 3,000 photographs on here. And there's a really useful function on here. If I want to remember where I went, I can go to a photograph. In fact, I can go to a map, and it will actually place all my photographs on the map. I don't know, has anybody else used that function? Yes? Yeah? Is that a known function? Who's never used that function? You've turned it off, right? Okay, right. But even though you've turned it off, actually, you have been tracked. I think apparently you can go and ask for it, but if you've had one of these devices, you have all of your data of exactly where you've been for all the years that you've been is somewhere, and people just don't know that, don't realise that, but actually. A lot of our data we have already shared a lot of our data. And actually, if you look at the generations, I've got three children from 27 to 22, just on Monday. The millennials have actually a lot less concern about sharing their data, because the thing is, things can only be useful to you if you actually give something away. So again, my wife and I don't know if you want to really hear about my holidays, but we'll just drive off around Europe, and every night you can go on booking.com and book wherever you want for the next night. And it gives you tremendous freedom. But however, you've got to give up something in order to get something back. Getting ready. I'm not going to ask you what that is. But if anybody, does everybody know?
It's the new radicals, John. You get what you give.
Right. You only get what you give, the new radicals. But actually the real question is, if you had predictive analytics could enable you to know what long-term illness you will develop and when. Would you contribute your personal data? And which of the following statements do you most agree with? So just pick one. If it would help, you know, what you would develop and when, would you contribute your personal data? So a live poll, 9 people, 12 people, 15 people. And you can put in there, this is completely anonymous, right? if you wouldn't, then just put in, no, I wouldn't. Right, we're up to 29, 31. Oh, are we going to reach the heights of 47 again? 41, we're nearly there. But anyway, what's that? So, right, so actually 36% said definitely if that would be used to prevent or delay the onset of illness. So in fact, that number's going up. But, should I wait for the last 3? But actually, if you take those top 2, you know, basically 87% people would actually contribute their data if they thought it was going to have a positive outcome. That is a live poll. You don't have to go to any research article. You can go and say, I was in a seminar, and out of 46 people, this many said they would share their data. But because you are not alone. Who's heard of the 100,000 Genome Project? 100,000 Genome Project, yeah. So one of the things that I did in my 4-stage life, okay, before coming back into employment, I went off and did a number of assignments with various companies, and one of the really interesting ones I worked with was the American company who invented the technology which mapped the human genome. And in terms of titles, everybody had a PhD. Right? You couldn't get into the company unless you had a PhD. But there's a project in America where 500,000 people have now had their genomes mapped. And in the UK, this looks at 70,000 people are going to have their genome mapped. So ultimately, people will contribute their data if they think it will have some really long-term benefit. I just love that clip. All right. But, in fact, the organiser who's here, he's Scottish. He says he plays that clip all the time. But I won't put it up as a quiz question, but who was that? Who was that? William Wallace. Huh? No. It's Mel Gibson. He's Australian. What was he doing in 1297? The Battle of Stirling Bridge. Fantastic. But in terms of what we need, it's all summed up in the term brave heart. If we work for a bureaucratic organisation, actually they don't really like us doing brave stuff. But actually, if we are going to allow people their own freedom, then actually we've got to allow them to use some of the technology and to make the choices that they want to. One of the things that I do, I spend a little bit of time at London Business School on their Making Innovation Happen programme. And basically they've got a definition that, in terms of innovation, which is exploiting new ideas. And the important bit about that is the exploiting bit. Otherwise, something is just a new idea. And there's all sorts of types of innovation. And they also look at what are the main barriers to innovation and people doing something new, something brave, something which hasn't been done before. And part of that is cultural. And part of that is you have to, and I think again it was said in one of the talks this morning, you have to allow people to take some risks. And in our health and safety environment, where we're also focused on the safety bit and covering people around in cotton wool, we won't allow people to make their own choices. And therefore, we don't allow them to have that freedom. And it's part of that freedom of mental well-being and physical well-being, which is actually going to continue to give them a fulfilling, active life. So one of the things that I'm most interested in is sort of management innovation, because we've actually got to create within our organisations a very human environment where actually people feel, or you feel, you're actually supported. My God, a management team that actually supported their staff, make them feel safe, because unless you feel safe and supported, it's very, very difficult to innovate. But those are the kinds of environments we actually need to create, because it's only in those environments where people will take a certain degree of risk and actually try something that is a little bit brave, a little bit new, allows people to use the innovation that is around you. Because this technology, this technology is here now. We've seen it, everybody's got one of these. But actually, the GPS technology to allow people with dementia the freedom to carry on going out and doing the stuff that they enjoy with the people who they enjoy doing it with, it's here now. This stuff is here now. And the thing is to use it now, not wait for the next new thing, because the next new thing is always around the corner and will always be coming. You've got to use what it is now. It's good. Sometimes it doesn't work, but on the whole, it does. And it's actually very, very cheap. And ultimately, it will allow people with dementia, early stage dementia, an element of freedom. Thank you.